About 5 years ago, I lived downtown in a major city in the USA. And because I always been a night person, I wanted to go on a walk. You know, I spent 4 years going around at night. You know, I never been afraid because I used to always joke with my roommate that even the drug dealers in the city were polite, so I never got scared by anything. But one day, it was a Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, I was taking my usual walk.
But all of that changed in just a few minutes of one evening. It was Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police patrol park quite a ways from my apartment. It was a quiet night, even for a weeknight, with very little traffic and almost no one on foot. The park, as it was most nights, was completely empty. I turned down a short side street in order to look back to my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street, on my side, was the silhouette of a man dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to waltz, but he finished with each box with an odd forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance walking, headed straight for me.
Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped away from the pavement to give him some type of way to cross me and avoid any contact with me. And as I looked back at him, I realized how gracefully he was moving. And he was very tall and lanky, and he was wearing an old suit. He danced like weirdly and closer and closer until I could make out his face. And his face was so weird. His eyes were open wide and wild, and he had a tilted back slightly, and he was looking he was looking into the sky constantly. His mouth was open wide into a like agonizing and stretched out smile, and his eyes were just like crazy. I just realized that it would be better to cross the street, so I crossed the street, and when I looked back, I just stopped and stared at him because he stopped dancing altogether, and he had one foot in the street, and he was facing directly to me, and his face was still weird. He was still looking at the sky, and his back was still slightly stretched backwards.
I was completely utterly unnerved by this. I started walking again, but kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I had put about half a block between us, I turned away from him for a moment to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The street and sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he had been standing to find him gone. For the briefest of moments, I felt relieved until I noticed him. He had crossed the street and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain he was facing me. I had looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear that he had moved fast. I was so shocked that I stood there for some time, staring at him, frozen. And when he started moving towards me, he took giant, exaggerated, tiptoed steps as if he were a cartoon character sneaking up on someone, except he was moving very, very quickly. I would like to say at this point I ran away. I pulled out my pepper spray or cell phone or anything at all, but I didn't. I just stood there, completely frozen as the smiling man kept running towards me.
And then he stopped again, about like 5 meters away from me, and still smiled and looked upwards. And when I finally found my voice, I wanted to say something like, "What do you want?" or anything of that nature, but I couldn't. Only thing I could say at that moment was a fearful, "What?" They say animals could smell fear, but humans cannot do that. I only know that humans can hear fear. And I know that from my voice, he could hear the fear. But he didn't care. He was still standing there, still smiling and staring at the sky.
And then, after what felt like forever, he turned around very slowly and started dance walking away. Just like that, not wanting to turn my back to him again. I just watched him go until he was far enough away to almost be out of sight. Then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched him in the horror as the distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back my way, and this time he was running. I ran too. I ran until I was off the side of the road and back onto better lit roads with sparse traffic. Looking behind me when he was nowhere to be found. The rest of my way home, I kept glancing over my shoulder away, always expecting to see his stupid smile, but he was never there. I lived in that city for 6 months after that night, and I never went out for another walk. There was something about his face that always haunted me. He didn't look drunk. He didn't look high. He looked completely and utterly insane. That's very scary thing to see at night. Just a casual walk.
Sei lá,
Calma,
beijo prestado isto.
calma, vamos lá. Hey. Have you ever heard of the Hell's Mine? No! Then go learn about it! Bye. And because he what?
Come on,